used in a pejorative way. It's something fake, something that it has no real medicinal value. But many studies in a field, it's a very interesting field that's called psychoneuroendocrinoimmunology, indicates that a very real biochemical response is present when a placebo is used with many patients. It is our opinion in the psyche worldview that the term perception effect would be a much more accurate definition of what the placebo effect actually is, because it's not fake. It's something very powerful that is happening in our system. The connection between the mind and the body has been proven beyond any reasonable doubt. There are tons of articles about that. And perception, or our belief system, can in fact produce a chemical response in the body. As our thoughts are translated into electromagnetic signal to the receptors on the cell. At that point, they in turn are translated into a biochemical response that is part of the mind-body's powerful self-healing capabilities. I will talk a little bit more about that, and if anyone listening to this interview is willing to know more, I strongly suggest to buy the amazing Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, that explains this in such a beautiful way. I think it's important also to mention, in addition to the placebo effect, that there is also the concept of nocebo effect. The nocebo effect is the opposite of the placebo effect. The nocebo effect is said to occur when negative expectation of the patient regarding a specific treatment cause the treatment to have a more negative effect than it otherwise would have. The placebo effect is immune enhancing. The nocebo effect is immune suppressing, okay? And this is another very important awareness that we should have mainly in this time. This is especially relevant in today's fear-based COVID-19 environment. If you think about that, we are in a non-stop nocebo environment since March. And the stress level of the majority of people is kept at such a high level, 24/7, 24/7, 24/7. And for our system is exhausting, okay? So let's go a little bit deeper, because let's see how the mind can affect the body in a very well-known example. That's the fight or flight response. That is also very actual in this actual situation with the COVID, with this pandemic situation. The fight or flight response is a physiological reaction that occurs in the presence of something that is terrifying, that's scary, either mentally or physically. This response is activated by the release of hormones that prepare your body to either stay and deal with the situation, with the threat, or to run away like a crazy. So it's a really important program for our for staying alive, to survive. In response to acute stress, the sympathetic nervous system of the body is activated due to the sudden release of hormones, and specifically two hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline, that have the functions that I just described. This results in an increase in the heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, to be ready to face the emergency. And then after the threat is gone, it takes between 20 to 60 minutes, according to how big the fight or flight response has been and how we perceived it. And it takes, again, 20 to 60 minutes for the body to return to its pre-emergency levels. Again, remember, we are in a super stress state since March. So the fight or flight response can happen in the face of an imminent physical danger, such as encountering an animal you fear. And it doesn't have to be a bear or a tiger. It could also be a spider if you are arachnophobic, or as a result of a more psychological threat, like COVID again. Like if you are scared about COVID and you see someone, this person can be perceived as a killer for you. And this is immediately triggers the fight or flight response. Okay? Some of the physical signs that may indicate the fight or flight response are the rapid heartbeat and accelerated breathing, pale or flushed skin, dilated pupils, to be more aware of the environment, the trembling. And it's also important to note that the response can be triggered due to both real and imaginary threats. While the flight or flight response happens automatically, that does not mean that it is always accurate. Sometimes we respond in this way even if there is no real threat. But again, what's real threat? It depends on our perception. So phobias are a good example of how the fight or flight response might be triggered in face of a perceived stress threat. A person who is terrified of spiders, again, like I mentioned before, might experience the acute stress response when he sees a spider. His body might go on alert and his heartbeat and respiration rate increase. This could be a normal reaction to this kind of fear and emergency. When this response becomes too severe, it may lead to a panic attack. A key concept here, really, really key, according to also Psyche and what I do and what I'm completely passionate, is that the perception of a situation determines the reaction. If I am scared, I will react in one way. If I am in peace and whole-brained and calm, I will react completely differently, or I will not react at all. If I'm not scared about spiders, I will not jump and shout like a crazy, okay? Like a person who is scared about spiders. If I am scared of COVID and I perceive the people around me like potential threats, I will live in a stressful state 24/7, and my whole mind-body system will be negatively affected. That's why it's so important to really work with our subconscious mind to change the perception we have about ourselves and the environment. If I feel confident, calm, and safe about COVID, for example, my whole life will be different. Using Psyche, we interact with all the levels of our mind that I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind, to safely and rapidly change any stressful perception, any stressful limiting belief we have about anything in life. Okay, anything that stresses us in life, that does not help us to stay and remain healthy. A personal experience, I personally worked with Psyche back in March regarding my perception of viruses in general. And it turned out to be a very powerful and curious experience. Not only I am not scared with viruses and bacteria, but I perceive them as really necessary for our evolution. I don't know if you know, but the 33%, 1/3 of our DNA is made from genes captured by ancient viruses. Okay, without viruses, we would not have evolved as much as we have evolved. So, and another very interesting fact about viruses, one of these genes that we inherited from viruses is the gene for protein that's called syncytin. That's a protein that 50 million years ago made possible the development of the placenta. The placenta is life. So, and syncytin, this beautiful protein that was a virus, that was a protein carried by a virus. Originally, it was not part of our system. Then it helped us to develop the placenta. And for those who do not know, the placenta provides oxygen and nutrients for the growing fetus and remove the waste from the fetus blood, and thus promotes life. So as a consequence, we can tell that this particular virus carrying this very precious protein promoted life. And it's so important. So we are in constant contact with old and new viruses, and many of them have represent, and will represent a valuable resource for human evolution in life. That's why it's so important was to really change the perception of what's happening. And another area in which the beautiful, amazing, powerful subconscious mind plays a big role is the epigenetic expression. And here, Bruce Lipton is the master of the universe in explaining the epigenetic expression, because I will do a quick summary just to explain how perception and how psyche can be useful in our health. But if you want to go to go deeper with the epigenetic expression and epigenetics, I strongly suggest you to buy Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief. It's such a beautiful book. I was able to read it in 2 days. I think I just started, and it was like I didn't even eat when I was reading. It was such a beautiful discovery. So here I will summarize the key concept, and just the ones that are useful to understand why perception, why the subconscious mind, why psyche is so important for our health and can be so important for our health. So according to epigenetic, the environment controls the epigenetic expression. In our genes, it's written our entire genetic code that it is used to build proteins that are the blocks that are essential for our life. We wouldn't be here without proteins, okay? Talking, okay? We wouldn't exist. We have about 25,000 genes, and each gene can create 2,000 proteins. So here you can already see and imagine how useful and powerful are these genes. And a very important distinction for the ones who are not used to study or to go a little bit deeper among genetic and epigenetic. Genetic studies the genetic code contained in the genes. Epigenetics, epi means above, studies the mechanism of the regulation of the gene expression. So there are really two different branches, okay? One studies the code, the other studies the expression. And as Bruce Lipton uses to say, if classical genetic would be right in its main dogma, we would live in a genetic determinism. That means that our destiny, health-wise, at least health-wise, is determined and unchangeable. I have half of DNA from my mother, half of DNA from my father, and all the bad and good things that my mother and my father had, I will get them. No choice, okay? This is the genetic determinism, okay? That's not such a good option. This would mean that we would be a victim of our DNA. And fortunately, it's not like that. Mm-hmm. The biology central dogma states that the DNA replicates itself out of the blue, then the DNA transcripts a molecule of messenger RNA. The RNA is just a copy of the DNA that is a blueprint for proteins in a very simple way. So the RNA then is translated into protein. But thanks to epigenetic, the biologists and also Bruce Lipton had a huge impact on that, discovered that the gene's expression does not depend on the gene itself. So it's not the gene that decides to activate, to turn off or on. But the gene's expression depends on certain molecules that activate or deactivate, turn on or off, express or depress a gene according to a specific signal coming from the extracellular environment, okay? And I will go deeper with that because this is absolutely a key point. The epigenetic control regulates the gene's expression and does not modify irreversibly the genetic code, as normally happens with genetic mutation. So when we work with epigenetic, the genetic code remains itself, it's not touched. But we change the expression that changes our health. And there are a lot of experiments that confirm that we are not victims of our genes, that confirm the epigenetic theory. One of the most common, there are so many, I just, maybe
But Duccio, I'm going to ask you something, and this is, of course, live. We haven't rehearsed anything. Would you be available for part 2? Can we bring you back?
If you like, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, we like. I mean, we are just sitting here so